At precisely 8:45 p.m. on October 2nd, 2025, deep within Russia's sprawling industrial heartland, a dramatic countdown began. While Vladimir Putin addressed the Valdai Discussion Club, oblivious to the imminent threat, a formidable swarm of Ukrainian drones was hurtling towards its target, merely 10 minutes from transforming a billion-dollar Russian factory into an inferno that would light up the night sky. This was no ordinary target. It was the Azad chemical plant, the very pulse of Putin's vast war machine, tirelessly churning out the explosive ingredients essential for almost every artillery shell unleashed on the front lines. The stakes could not have been higher. What defies conventional understanding, what truly breaks the laws of physics, is the sheer audacity of this plan. A drone of this specific size typically carries enough fuel for a mere 600 miles, tops. By all logical calculations, this entire menacing swarm should have exhausted its fuel supply a staggering 400 miles ago. Yet, the Ukrainians, with their meticulous foresight, had engineered a solution. These FP-1 drones were not flying in isolation. They were being sustained by an invisible airborne lifeline, a clandestine network of mother drones that silently beamed power to the attackers, miraculously extending their operational range far beyond what even the most ingenious Russian engineers could have possibly conceived. But the genius didn't end there. This entire intricate operation was meticulously synchronized to coincide with the precise moment Russian commanders would be at their most distracted, a live, televised address by Vladimir Putin himself. However, to reach the Azad plant's vital core, this drone armada, first, had to slip past a perimeter defense system so notoriously unreliable, its own exasperated operators mockingly dubbed it the refrigerator alarm. Its propensity for false alarms far outstripped its ability to detect genuine threats. The Russians believed they had constructed an impenetrable billion-dollar fortress. The Ukrainians, in stark contrast, possessed only inexpensive drones, an unseen energy grid, and a profound, almost unsettling grasp of human psychology. It was a confrontation designed to trade brute muscle for sheer intellect. The critical moment arrived at 8:51 p.m. The lead FP-1 drone breached the 40-mile detection perimeter. Inside a nondescript, dimly lit Russian security outpost, the infamous refrigerator alarm suddenly shrieked to life. The system, ironically, was functioning flawlessly. The real catastrophe lay in its software, which upon observing the dozen low-altitude, slow-moving blips, made a fatally flawed assumption. It dismissed them as nothing more than a migratory flock of geese, lost in the industrial haze. And here lies the crucial detail, often overlooked by analysts, a design flaw the Ukrainians were explicitly banking on. This state-of-the-art radar system had been engineered for one primary purpose: to detect and track ballistic missiles screaming down from the stratosphere, not a silent swarm of drones meticulously skimming the Earth's surface at a mere 200 feet. It possessed a built-in 3-second delay in its clutter rejection software, 3 agonizing seconds to decide whether an incoming signal represented a genuine threat or just environmental noise. For a hypersonic ballistic missile, 3 seconds might as well be an eternity. But for these cunning drones, it was a golden ticket, a pre-calculated window of opportunity. Just as the Russian system began to tentatively second-guess its initial goose theory, the lead drone executed its first brilliant maneuver. It ejected a sudden cloud of cheap micro-flares, instantly creating a radar signature equivalent to that of a full-size passenger jet. As the bewildered Russian radar frantically scrambled to process this sudden, massive phantom target, the remainder of the swarm performed a breathtaking dive. They plunged into the winding valleys of the Ural foothills, using the very curvature of the Earth as their natural shield. There, advanced onboard AI instantaneously rerouted the entire formation's flight path in milliseconds, a calculation executed faster than a Russian operator could even take a sip of coffee. Zig left. Zag right. The radar was now hopelessly chasing a ghost. They had successfully punched through the initial perimeter, a clean and audacious success. However, this hard-won victory was destined to be fleeting. The electronic cacophony of a radar system flailing in confusion had inadvertently roused the next formidable layer of Russian defense. This layer did not rely on conventional radar. Instead, it wielded raw, crushing electromagnetic force. At 8:53 p.m., The operator's screen dissolved into a blinding blizzard of digital snow. A powerful Russian TK-25E electronic warfare pod had awakened, unleashing a torrent of raw electromagnetic energy potent enough to completely fry an iPhone from a mile away. The GPS signal vanished. The control link went dead. For any conventional drone, over 1,000 miles from its point of origin, this would have spelled an immediate death sentence. The mission, by all accounts, should have been irrevocably over. Except, the Ukrainians had anticipated this precise countermeasure. The moment the operator's connection was severed, the drone's onboard AI seamlessly transitioned into ghost mode. This was the true stroke of genius underlying the entire audacious plan. While Russia focused its formidable energy on attacking the signal, the drones simply ceased listening for one. They began navigating autonomously, utilizing preloaded satellite maps, meticulously comparing the terrain captured by their cameras in real time to the detailed maps stored in their memory. It was akin to trying to jam a driver's radio, only to discover he was navigating flawlessly with an old-fashioned paper map, knowing every road and landmark by heart. But the Ukrainian drones were not merely designed to passively endure the assault. The swarm executed a pre-programmed, daring countermeasure. One drone courageously peeled away from the main group, rapidly ascended to 500 feet, and deliberately detonated prematurely. It was a calculated, sacrificial act. The sudden, intense electromagnetic burst overloaded the Russian EW processor, a brilliant digital decoy that forced the entire system into an abrupt reboot. In that fleeting, precious window of electronic chaos, the first mother drone in the Ghost Relay Network made its crucial move. Launched hours earlier from a cunningly disguised van near Kursk, it ascended to its designated altitude and beamed a highly focused sliver of radio frequency energy across 15 miles, striking the lead FP1. The drone's battery, which had been dangerously dipping into the red, now miraculously ticked back up. It had just taken its first long-distance drink of energy, revitalized. The flickering signal to the operator surged back to life. They had successfully punched through the electronic wall. The sole lingering problem was that the sacrificial explosion wasn't merely an electronic flare. It was a very real, very physical detonation. And far below, Russian ground patrols had just witnessed it. At 8:55 p.m., tracers from heavy machine guns ripped frantically through the night sky, a panicked, chaotic response from patrols who now knew beyond doubt they were under attack. A mobile surface-to-air missile launcher, hastily brought to readiness, began its slow, deliberate turret rotation, relentlessly hunting for a target. This was the precise moment where raw, overwhelming firepower should have utterly crushed cheap, nimble technology. Yet, a fatal flaw undermined this frantic Russian response: the inherent limitations of human reaction time. The commanding officer had likely just torn himself away from Vladimir Putin's speech moments earlier, now shouting urgent orders into a radio. It would take his SAM crew a full, precious 10 seconds to acquire a definitive lock and prepare fire. Ukraine's entire intricate strategy was meticulously built around exploiting that critical 10-second gap between initial panic and effective, coordinated action. Just as the SAM system prepared to lock onto the swarm, the drones executed their final, elegant deception. One drone strategically peeled off, climbing sharply and purposefully illuminating Russian radar, a willing, disposable decoy. While the SAM crew focused all their efforts on tracking this compelling bait, the real attack group plummeted. Low, they screamed towards the facility, hugging the terrain with breathtaking precision, dodging wild bursts of gunfire like seasoned athletes in the heat of competition. Their AI-driven flight controls were making 50-millisecond course corrections, quite literally thinking faster than the bullets whistling past them. And then, as their energy reserves dipped precariously from the high-G maneuvers, the second link in the Ghost relay chain sprang into action. Loitering 60 miles away, cunningly disguised the ground radar as a slow-moving weather balloon, the second mother drone beamed a fresh, powerful pulse of energy into the swarm, topping off their batteries for the final, desperate run. The SAM system had been expertly tricked. The bewildered ground patrols were now firing uselessly into an empty patch of sky, and the main attack swarm was screaming towards the plant at treetop level, the towering pipes of their target now clearly in sight. But new, piercing alarm was sounding, this time from deep within the factory itself. At 8:57 p.m., The Russian command center finally experienced a collective eureka moment. Their drones had failed. Their jammers had failed. Their missiles had failed. Yet, the attack drones were still coming. This should have been impossible. They had to possess a hidden power source. It was a brilliant piece of battlefield deduction, but it was, tragically, about 5 minutes too late. A wide-area search radar, sweeping the sky hundreds of miles away, registered a faint, intermittent return. It was one of the Furia mother drones, loitering high in the stratosphere. An Orlan 10 reconnaissance drone was immediately diverted to hunt it down, to sever the swarm's lifeline. The Russians believed they had finally located the Achilles heel. But here's the crucial detail they could not possibly have known. The ghost relay wasn't a mere simple chain. It was an intelligent, self-healing network. It was like attempting to unplug a single lamp, only to discover that the entire house was wired to a dozen different interconnected circuit breakers. As the Russian Orlan 10 closed in on one of the Furia-M drones, the Ukrainian network executed its final, most ingenious trick. The targeted Furia-M did not attempt to flee. Instead, it projected a decoy energy beam, a phantom signal, artfully leading the Russian hunter away on a wild goose chase. While the Orlan diligently pursued this phantom, the network's AI had already seamlessly rerouted the real power flow. It would take the Russian system a full 10 seconds to calculate and intercept. The Ukrainian AI rerouted the entire network in less than 2. The final, critical energy pulse was beamed from the very last Furia-M in the chain, a drone launched just an hour ago from a hidden position only 60 miles from the target. The FP-1 attack drones, now mere seconds from achieving their objective, greedily drank in this ultimate charge. Their batteries instantly jumped back to a full 100%. The lifeline was secure. The attack was fully powered, and now, nothing remained between them and their target except the factory's own panicked, desperate last line of chemical safety protocols. At 8:58 p.m., the battle shifted abruptly from the digital realm to a frantic chemical defense. Panicked workers inside the AOD plant slammed the prominent red emergency buttons. Heavy emergency safety valves, each weighing hundreds of pounds, began to groan and grind shut. A robust chemical fire suppression system roared to life, flooding the pipe junctions with a thick, obscuring wall of white foam. On paper, this represented the final, heroic stand, a formidable barrier of steel and foam meticulously designed to avert a catastrophe. Except, the Ukrainians had already meticulously identified its Achilles heel. Using sophisticated satellite thermal imaging, they had precisely mapped every single pipe. And, more crucially, they had timed every single valve operation. They knew, with chilling precision, that it would take a full 20 seconds for those heavy steel doors to seal completely. A 20-second window of vulnerability. The lead FP-1 was now a mere 1,500 feet out. Time to impact, less than 3 agonizing seconds. And attempting to stop a 15,000 miles per hour jet of molten copper with chemical foam was as futile as trying to halt a speeding freight train with a garden hose. The unforgiving laws of physics simply did not care. The drone's AI, guided by that final, potent pulse from the Furia-M, executed its ultimate microcorrection. It ignored the foam. It ignored the frantic gunfire. It ignored everything save for the one critical detail, the precise, discolored weld joint on the main ammonia pipeline, the single weakest link in the entire industrial chain. The final course was irrevocably locked. The final seconds were ticking away with terrifying speed. The factory's last-ditch defenses were 17 seconds too slow. The FP-1's camera had locked onto the image, rock steady, its target not the massive pipe itself, but a single, almost imperceptible discolored weld seam, an imperfection identified with startling clarity by Ukrainian analysts from 400 miles up in space. On the ground below, alone, desperate security guard emptied his AK-74 into the indifferent night sky, a final, utterly useless act of defiance. His bullets sliced through empty air. That billion-dollar factory possessed the turning radius of a tectonic plate. The drone, however, required just 50 milliseconds to make a fatal, final adjustment. The wall of white foam rushed up to meet the camera. The emergency safety valve was still grinding shut. It was too late. At 8:59 p.m., the FP-1 made its devastating connection. This was not merely an explosion. It was a profound physics lesson delivered at the blistering speed of light. The drone's shaped charge detonated, triggering what is scientifically known as the Monroe effect. The blast did not expand outwards in a conventional explosion. Instead, it focused inward with terrifying precision, crushing a solid copper cone embedded inside the warhead. In less than a microsecond, that cone violently turned inside out, forming a blistering jet of molten metal. That jet, traveling at an astonishing speed of over 15,000 miles per hour, impacted the 0.6-inch thick steel pipe, not like a blunt bullet, but with the surgical precision of a needle-piercing paper. The superheated copper instantly ignited the highly pressurized ammonia contained within. The catastrophic result was a ferocious secondary explosion that ripped the pipeline open from the inside out. It transformed Russia's most critical explosive ingredient into their single most spectacular and utterly undeniable oops moment of the year. The Kremlin's official narrative undoubtedly would be a masterpiece of denial, a convenient technical malfunction, a bizarre refrigerator explosion, anything but the inconvenient truth. But that inferno wasn't just consuming a factory. It was incinerating the very key ingredient for nearly every Russian artillery shell. The 2.3 million tons of nitrogen fertilizer produced here wasn't destined for growing crops. It was destined for making things go boom. Ukraine hadn't merely struck a building. They had struck the very heart that pumped the explosive lifeblood to the entire front line. And that single act sparked a logistical nightmare that would stretch 1,000 miles back to the battlefield. The ensuing chain reaction was brutally simple and inescapable. No ammonia meant no explosives. And no explosives meant the cannons would fall ominously silent. Not for a lack of targets, but for a devastating lack of anything to fire. But the fallout from this attack wasn't merely physical. While Vladimir Putin was on live television, confidently proclaiming an invincible Russia, this colossal fire provided the ultimate live fact-check, broadcast vividly across the Ural sky. The deeply cherished myth of a secure Russian heartland didn't just crack. It was utterly shattered and swiftly uploaded to Telegram in crisp 4K resolution by panicked locals. The bear hadn't just been poked in its own supposedly impenetrable cave. Its profound humiliation was now going virally global. And this, truly, was the crowning genius of the entire audacious attack. It presented Moscow with an impossible choice, a strategic checkmate that defied an easy solution. The Russian generals were now confronted with a defensive blanket that had suddenly become far too short. Should they pull their advanced Panzer air defense systems from the vulnerable front lines to guard factories deep inside Russia's interior? Or should they leave their vital industrial heartland completely exposed to further devastating attacks? Every single Panzer system relocated to protect a city in the Urals represented a new, gaping hole, opened up for Ukrainian jets and drones over the active battlefield. This single, inexpensive drone strike had cunningly forced Russia to use its own shield to inadvertently weaken its own sword. Let us consider the stark mathematics of this engagement. A few $1,000s in ingeniously modified drones, combined with sheer, unadulterated ingenuity, had just neutralized a billion-dollar strategic asset and simultaneously plunged a global superpower into a profound strategic crisis. The lesson, etched in fire, is brutal and undeniable. In the complex landscape of modern warfare, victory is no longer solely about the sheer size of your army. It is ultimately about the boundless size and audacity of your ideas.